Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. Kirk, no. Mr. Kane, aye. Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Mr. Coburn, no. Mr. Blunt, no. Mr. Hatch, aye. Mr. Hatch, aye.
Let me know if there's any other information you can correct.
Mr. Toomey, no. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Balkus, aye. Mr. Casey. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Booker, aye. Mr. Levin, aye. Mrs. Boxer. Mrs. Boxer, aye. Mr. Crapo, no. Mr. McCain. Mr. McCain, aye. Mr. Cruz, no. Mr. Cardin, aye. Mr. Pryor, aye. Mr. Barrasso, no. Mr. Paul, no. Ms. Hirono, aye. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mr. Moran, no. Ms. Warren, aye. Mr. Portman, I'm sorry. Get up. Mr. Portman, aye. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, South Dakota, aye. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson, aye. Ms. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Enzi. Mr. Enzi, no. Mr. Harkin, aye. Mr. Beckich, aye. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chambliss, aye. Mr. Coates, no. He went in the cloak and collar. Mr. Heller, no. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Menendez, aye. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, aye. Mr. Merkley, aye. No. Mr. Corker, no. Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett, aye.
Well represented.
Who? Mrs. Hagan, aye.
Yeah, I can read. They taught me that.
You want to use a gavel?
On this vote, the yeas are 64, the nays are 36. The motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to House H.J. Res 59 is agreed to.
Move to reconsider.
Is there objection? This, without objection, so ordered. The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 3304, the Department of Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2014, signed by 17 senators.
Mr. President,
The senator from Alabama.
I move to waive the quorum.
Is there objection? Without objection. The mandatory forum has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 3304 shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Blumenthal. Did he say no? Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Cochran.
Sorry, I wasn't part of the fight. If I say good morning,
Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Durbin.
Next window, sir. Next window.
Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Flake, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heinrich, Ms. Heitkamp, Mr. Heller, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kane, Mr. King, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Manchin, Mr. Markey, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez,
Am I in? Good to go.
Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer,
I love the kind of fake, like when you think you're this road, you just come. That's what art is.
Mr. Scott, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Senators voting in the affirmative: Alexander, Ayotte, Baldwin, Baucus, Begich, Bennett, Blumenthal, Blunt, Booker, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown, Burr, Harper, Casey, Coates, Cochran, Collins, Coons, Donnelly, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Graham, Hagan, Harkin, Hatch, Heinrich, Heitkamp, Hirono, Johans, Johnson of South Dakota, Kane, King, Klobuchar, Landrieu, Leahy, Manchin, Markey, McCaskill, Menendez, Mikulski, Murkowski, Murphy, Murray, Nelson, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Schatz, Schumer, Scott, Shaheen, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Warren, Whitehouse, Wicker, Wyden. Mr. Cardin, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Barrasso, Chambliss, Coburn, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, Cruz, Enzi, Fisher, Flake, Grassley, Heller, Isaacson, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kirk, Lee, McConnell, Hall, Risch, Roberts, Rubio, Sanders, Sessions, Shelby, Toomey, Vitter. Mr. Moran, aye. Mr. Merkley, aye. Mr. McCain, aye. Mr. Portman, no. Mr. Inhofe, aye. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. Hoven, no. Ms. Stabenow, aye. Mr. Tester, aye. Cantwell. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Levin. Mr. Levin,
No, you can't.
aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 71, the nays are 29. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion is agreed to.
President.
The clerk will report the measure.
House message to accompany H.R. 3304.
Cloture having been invoked, the motion to refer falls. The senator from Michigan. Senate will be in order.
Mr. President, I'm very pleased to join now with Senator Inhofe, the ranking Republican on our committee, in bringing to the floor the agreement between the Armed Services Committees of the Senate and the House on the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2014. The House of Representatives.
The Senate will please be in order.
Mr. President, the House passed this bill last week by a vote of 350 to 69, and if we pass it here in the Senate, which I'm optimistic now that we will, it'll mark the 53rd year in a row that we have enacted this bill that is so essential to the defense of our nation and to our men and women in uniform and their families. I want to thank all the members of the Armed Services Committee and our staffs. I especially want to thank our subcommittee chairs and ranking members for the hard work that they've done to get us to the finish line on this bill. And of course, I want to thank Senator Inhofe for the close partnership that we have in leading this committee. We have both had the benefit of a strong relationship with the chairman and ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Buck McKeon and Adam Smith, in our endeavor. Now, Mr. President, I share the disappointment of senators with our inability to vote on more amendments when our committee bill was brought to the Senate floor a few weeks ago. Senator Inhofe and I spent a week on the Senate floor before Thanksgiving trying to bring up more amendments and to have them debated and voted on. We tried to reach agreement to limit consideration to defense-related amendments, but we were unable to do that. We tried to get consent to vote on 2 sexual assault amendments, the Gillibrand Amendment and the McCaskill Amendment, that had been fully debated, but we couldn't get consent to do that. We tried to get consent to adopt a package of 39 amendments that had been cleared on both sides, but we were unable to do even that. It then became clear given the Senate schedule, that our only hope of enacting a defense bill this year was to negotiate a new bill with the House Armed Services Committee on the basis of two bills. One that was reported out of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and two, the bill that was passed by the House of Representatives. And then we decided we would seek enactment of a new bill in both houses. That new bill passed the House without amendment, and if we fail to pass the same bill, there will be no National Defense Authorization Act this year, with the result being that we would deny the Department of Defense vital authorities, we would undermine congressional oversight of the military, and we would fail in our duty to provide our men and women in uniform the support that they need and deserve. Now, the bill before us is not a Democratic bill and it's not a Republican bill. It is a bipartisan, bicameral defense bill. It is a good bill and one that deserves the strong support that it received in the House of Representatives and that I hope will tomorrow receive a strong vote in the Senate. The bill includes hundreds of important provisions to ensure that the Department can carry out its essential national defense missions. Here's just a few examples. Our bill extends the Department of Defense's authority to pay out combat pay and hardship duty pay. The bill extends supplemental impact aid to help local school districts educate military children. The bill extends existing military land withdrawals at China Lake, Chocolate Mountain, and Limestone Hills that would otherwise expire, leaving the military without critical testing and training capabilities. The bill includes a new land withdrawal, which is critical to the Marines, to expand its training area at 29 Palms. Our bill provides needed funding for the destruction of the Syrian chemical weapons stockpile and for efforts of the Jordanian armed forces to secure that country's border with Syria. Our bill enables the Department of Defense to save more than $1 billion by authorizing a number of multi-year contracts. Our bill includes more than 30 provisions, as our presiding officer well knows, more than 30 provisions to address the problem of sexual assault in the military. For example, we provide every military sexual assault survivor a special victims counsel, a lawyer who works not for commanders, not for prosecutors or defense attorneys or a court, but for the victim. We include strong new protections for survivors, for those people who have been victims, making it a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice to retaliate against a service member who reports a sexual assault, and requiring that the Department of Defense's Inspector General review and investigate any allegation of such retaliation. Our bill requires that commanders who become aware of a reported sexual assault immediately forward that information to criminal investigators. Our bill ends the ability of commanders to modify findings and convictions for sexual assaults and other serious crimes. Our bill provides that any decision by a commander not to prosecute a sexual assault complaint undergoes an automatic review by a higher command authority, which in nearly all cases would mean a general or a flag officer. And our bill includes the Boxer Amendment to make the Article 32 process more like a grand jury proceeding, in which the purpose is to determine probable cause rather than the current process, which is used as a discovery tool by the defense. Now, while this change is not limited to sexual assault cases, it will mean that the victim of a sexual assault won't have to appear in person and be subjected to cross-examination by the defense. As senators are aware, we were unable to vote on either the Gillibrand Amendment or the McCaskill Amendment here on the floor because of procedural objections. I hope that the Senate will be able to consider and vote on both of these important initiatives early next year. But again, relative to sexual assault, our bill does contain groundbreaking reforms that will provide much-needed assistance to victims of sexual assault, while also helping establish a climate in the military in which there is no tolerance for sexual assault or for retaliation against those who report it. Now, with regard to Guantanamo, the bill that we reported out of the Armed Services Committee included both language making it possible to bring detainees to the United States for trial and a provision making it easier to transfer detainees back to their home countries. The full Senate voted to retain these provisions by a 55 to 43 vote when the committee-reported bill was on the floor. The compromise that we reached includes the House prohibition on bringing Gitmo detainees to the United States, but follows the Senate language generally, which provides our military greater flexibility to transfer Gitmo detainees to third countries. As a result, our military will be able to make decisions about how long to keep detainees and under what circumstances to transfer them to third countries on the basis of a real-world evaluation of risks rather than the current law, which provides an arbitrary and extreme checklist of certification requirements. Mr. President, we recently received letters from our senior military leaders urging us to enact the defense authorization bill before we leave this year. For example, General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, wrote that the authorities included in this bill, quote, are critical to the nation's defense and urgently needed to ensure that we all keep faith with the men and women, military and civilian, selflessly serving in our armed forces. General Ray Odierno, the Army Chief of Staff, wrote us, quote, from authorities that help us prevent and respond to sexual assault, restore readiness, allow for continuous work in our industrial base, and start important military construction projects. The National Defense Authorization Act is critical to your soldiers, their families, and the numerous local communities that support our installations. Admiral Jonathan Greenert, the Chief of Naval Operations, stated that pushing the bill into next year, quote, would mean critical authorities expire, which would exacerbate my readiness challenge and jeopardize our commitment to our servicemen and women. General James Amos, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, wrote the following, quote, without a National Defense Authorization Act, landmark legislation transforming the Uniform Code of Military Justice and improving the support provided to victims of sexual assault will be lost. He continued, I'm also concerned about the adverse impact on logistical support for coalition forces in Afghanistan, our ability to retrograde military equipment along the northern distribution network, and the impact on coalition support funds that support ground transportation of supplies and retrograde of equipment through Pakistan. General Mark Welsh, the Air Force Chief of Staff, wrote, quote, the FY14 NDAA contains critical authorities that enable us to protect the American people while keeping our promise to our active duty, Guard, Reserve, and civilian airmen. If this important legislation is not enacted, I worry about significant impacts to Air Force operations that could jeopardize the missions we are tasked to perform. Simply put, General Welsh said, we cannot operate effectively without your help. Without your help and without the direction that the NDAA provides. General Frank Grass, the Chief of the National Guard Bureau, told us, quote, failure to enact an NDAA would break faith with our Army and Air Guardsmen by not reauthorizing special pay and bonuses. Also, authorities contained in the NDAA are crucial to maintaining the training, equipment, and opportunities necessary for the National Guard to remain an operational force ready to respond to domestic and overseas contingencies, close quote. And, Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that these letters be included in full in the record at this point.
Without objection.
Finally, Mr. President, we have managed to pass a National Defense Authorization Act for 52 straight years, including a number of recent years when we were unable to pass a bill in the Senate, therefore unable to go to a traditional conference. That is not the best way to proceed. I think we all acknowledge that. But our troops and their families and our nation's security deserve a defense bill, and what we are offering to the Senate is the only practical way to get a bill passed and enacted. And again, before I yield the floor, I want to thank Senator Inhofe and his staff who have joined so closely with myself and all of the members of the Armed Services Committee and our staff to make it possible to get, as I said before, this close to the finish line. And I'm confident that we're going to cross that finish line because of the hard work of our members. And I'll especially point out our subcommittee chairs and the ranking members, but all of the members of the Armed Services Committee, including Senator Blumenthal, who at this moment is presiding over the United States Senate, who's played such an important role personally in getting us to where we're at. And with that, and again with my thanks to Senator Inhofe, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, first I want to say the same thing. It sounds like it's all rehearsed, but it's not. It's actually a reality that I've always felt that I could call and talk to the chairman about things that we might not have in common, although I think I can only remember one issue where we're on opposite sides, but we have our reasons for being on opposite sides, and nonetheless we work those out. Then between John Bonzo and Peter, it's always a joy to be able to call and know that you're reaching the top and you're going to be able to come up with the decisions. Now, I talked to a lot of the Republicans who voted against this, and I want the chairman to be aware of this, that I think almost all of them that voted against it voted for one reason, and that is the process. They wanted to have amendments. They are entitled to amendments. I think we said that over the last 10 years we have averaged 9 days of debate on the most significant bill each year. That's an average, and we've had about 100 amendments average. So that's something that both the chairman and I agree should have happened, but it just didn't happen, and you can't really blame one side more than the other. Then, of course, when the nuclear option came, that got things pretty hostile down here, and unfortunately, the thing to suffer was our bill. I feel strongly that we have a good bill here. In fact, a lot of people don't know how this process works, but when you cannot get a bill through the House and or the Senate to make it a reality, and I had to go through this one year when I was on the House Armed Services Committee. Then they had the Big Four, and that's the chairman and the ranking member of the Senate and the chairman and the ranking member of the House get together and put this together. And that may not be the process that in fact, it's not the process we wanted. But that's the choice became, do we have a bill or do we not have a bill? And we got down to that choice. And so what I tried to do, and I failed, I'm embarrassed to say I failed with many of our Republicans, explaining to them what would happen if we don't have a bill. I mean, it was, and I started writing the things down that the chairman talked about in this bill, and I couldn't keep up too fast, but I want to mention a couple of things that I think perhaps were not mentioned. I think that, of course, we did cover, on the Gitmo thing, I look at it just a little bit differently than the chairman does. I like the restoration of the one-year prohibition on the transferring of the detainees to the United States. That was a 12-month provision that we had last time that we tried to get in, and we actually addressed this in our bill. But in this bill, the substitute bill that we just now voted on, I think it's a very important something that I feel very strongly about. And on the sexual assault, you know, we had both Senators McCaskill and Senator Gillibrand, and I recall both of them thinking, well, this isn't everything I wanted, but they both thought it sure is a lot better than not having a bill. And so I think we've really done a good job there. I think there are a lot of areas where I always pick out one that shows how much this would cost. If you just look at the CVN 78, 75% finished right now, $12 billion spent on it now, and if we didn't have this bill, I'm sure we would try to do something, but the work would stop. People would be laid off. It would then cost a lot more to wind things up and get back in. When I say a lot more, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars more. And so that is one of the great victories by having this. The one thing that I wanted, so many of my constituents are concerned about that I think needs to be called to everyone's attention that's in this bill, and that is the UN Arms Trade Treaty. You know, I remember back when we had the bill that didn't ultimately pass, but we had an all-night session, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, I passed my amendment that would preclude us from getting involved in that treaty. And this is after our Secretary of State had already signed this treaty. And we had 53 votes. We had all the Republicans and 6 of the Democrats who voted in favor of that. Now, that didn't pass. But it's very important that we address that, not just to protect Second Amendment rights, but also to protect our ability to help our allies without having to go through the United Nations. And we have that provision in here, which I think is very significant. On the BRAC is controversial. I was opposed to the last BRAC round, and my feeling at that time was that we're getting the force structure down artificially low, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing down the infrastructure to meet that, because I was hoping that we'd be able to, and that's the same reason that I would not want to have a BRAC round right now. We've never been in such a critical fiscal condition on supporting our military as we are today. And one thing that is certain about BRAC rounds, you can debate how much ultimately they'll save, but everybody knows in the first 5 years it costs. These are 5 years that we really can't afford it, particularly the first year. And then the last thing I would mention, something I felt stronger about than I think most of the rest of them did, and that is how much we've spent on these drop-in fuels, the biofuels, and we have language here that would say that we would not do it unless they're cost competitive. That's a huge issue to me personally. And the last two that I would mention, people say, you know, in my conference, a lot of them were saying, well, what's going to happen on December 31st if we don't pass the bill? And I have a long list of things here that I will put into the record at this point, but I only mention 3 of them. One is on the aviation officer retention bonus. I think we all know, and most of us believe, we made a mistake in April when we shut down some of our squadrons, and about 1/3 of our fighter squadrons, and for a period of about 3 months. Now, General Welsh presented a very persuasive case that it costs a lot more to get those back in current, as we started to do in July, than the money that was saved during the time that they were down. And I think we lost a lot of aviators at that time because they were grounded, they weren't flying, and they just decided they'd go into the private sector. Now, if you take away the aviation officer retention bonus, that's going to accelerate the number of people that would otherwise stay in the military. And that would have gone away on the 31st of December. And I don't know how many of the aviators we'd lose, but I do know this: it's a $25,000 bonus, and if you have to, the difference between retraining and retaining is huge. You can retain them if a bonus would influence them for $25,000, but retraining to get to the optimum would be, the first level being the F-22, is about $7.5 million. But there's another $9 million to get up to the top proficiency. That means $17 million as opposed to $25,000. So I just think we need to, in the future, always keep track of retraining and retaining. The health care professional bonus, that would end on the 31st of December. And why is that important? Because a lot of these people that are taking care of our wounded warriors, not just at the hospitals, but also after they leave, they are paid, they have special pay to take care of our wounded warriors, those who have made the sacrifices. And that would have ended on December 31st. And the re-enlistment bonus for active members would also have done that. I remember from my military days that when people were getting ready to leave, they looked at the bonus. That's there to encourage them to stay. So it's not just aviators, it's the ground guys and gals too. So we've done a lot, and I really appreciate that opportunity. The last thing I'll say, and I'll let you put up my, this is my appeal to the minority leader and the majority leader. You know, we could play the game and extend this thing out and be here till midnight, I guess, on Thursday night. It happens that tomorrow is my 54th wedding anniversary, and I would really like to ask both the majority and the minority if we couldn't yield back a little bit of time. We know we're going to have the votes for this, but I would sure like those 20 kids and grandkids are waiting for me on our for a big dinner on our 54th wedding anniversary tomorrow night. So have mercy, give us a break, and let's try to get this thing voted on and go home. And Merry Christmas to everybody. I'll yield the floor.
Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, I surely join Senator Inhofe in that plea that this time, or much of the time between now and the 30-hour end point, be yielded back. Somehow or other, I hope our leaders can manage that for not just Senator Inhofe's 54th wedding anniversary. You know, I thought I was a heroic figure. My wife more heroic than me because we've been married 52 years.
Oh, you'll make it.
Yeah, but she's a hero or heroine. But in any event, I surely join in that request. Now, Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that a full list of our majority and minority staff who've given so much of themselves and their families be included in the record at this point. And the list is headed up by Peter Levine, John Bonsall, and then all of the other staff members, both the majority and minority staff.
Without objection.
And also at this time, Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that Whitney Wrights, a State Department Fellow in the office of Senator Landrieu, be granted floor privileges for the remainder of the 113th Congress.
Without objection.
And I yield the floor, and again want to thank all of the members of our committee and the staff who've worked. You know, I don't know how to describe the effort every year that is put into our authorization bill. It's a round number, 52, maybe now 53 years. Not round, but it's a big number. It just doesn't say what each year, each month of every year, our staffs put into the annual authorization bill. It's an extraordinary effort that they make. Senator Inhofe and our colleagues and I watch them really with amazement because of what they give up to accomplish this. We're not quite there yet. We have to have final passage vote. I hope it comes a lot earlier than late tomorrow. And I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Wyoming.
Mr. President, I too want to congratulate the senator from Oklahoma and Kay for their 54th wedding anniversary. Quite a landmark and an outstanding couple, and I hope that they get to celebrate that on their day. I think that probably if we knew that the final vote on this was going to be the end of the whole process for this before Christmas, that there probably would be time yielded back. But if there are going to be a whole bunch of things thrown in that really have relatively little importance before the end of the year, you probably won't get your wish. So I'm hoping that we can end it with this bill. I'm going to rise to express my disappointment that this National Defense Authorization Act that we'll soon be having a final vote on is the product of another deal instead of the result of discussion, debate, and an amendment process on the floor. Once again, the Senate's failed to do its job. The Senate Majority Leader has blocked all but 2 amendments to this NDAA from consideration. And those were to prevent any other amendments from happening. That's not right. That's not the way we used to do it. If you want to know what's wrong with the Senate and why people of all political persuasions are upset with Congress, that's a big part of the answer right there. No amendments allowed. Now, here we are at the end of the year. This didn't have to come at the end of the year. And in fact, I never remember us debating it this late in the year. And incidentally, this is the only committee that gets a bill every year. The other committees have to fight for some time in there and hope they have a persuasive enough bill to get it. But every year that I've been here, we have debated this National Defense Authorization Act, and it's important. There are two primary things that we're charged with, and one is the spending for the United States, and the other one's the national defense. And this is about the national defense. And it shouldn't be crowded into 30 hours or even 1 week. There ought to be the ability to express what we think is important dealing with national defense. And we're not being allowed to do that. This is an important bill for our country, and there are a lot of important issues in it that we need to discuss. We haven't considered issues relating to our nuclear deterrent, to privacy concerns related to the National Security Administration, to detention of United States citizens, and the need to address sexual assault in the military, or a number of other important issues. In the past, we've spent multiple weeks on the defense bill and considered dozens of amendments. That's what we should be doing this year, too. Now, I understand that we've crowded it up against this December 31st deadline and how critical that is. That should not have happened. So our national security needs need to be fully debated, and it needs to be debated by the whole Senate. Every voice needs to be heard. That means that every constituent out there that we have to represent has to have at least an opportunity to have their interests reflected in this national bill. And we all have some military in our states, and it's a very important thing. And so that's how it's supposed to happen, and that's the way the Senate does its best work. So one of the things that's been holding it up, of course, was nominations, and most of those nominations didn't have urgency to them. They could have been done next year without hurting the United States at all. Not the case with the National Defense Authorization Act. So we don't have priorities on what we're debating around here, and then we have limits because of the time frame. It's not right. One of those important issues that we're skipping over is the nuclear deterrent. I offered several amendments on this issue because I believe the administration's playing a dangerous game with national security. The solution I proposed in my amendment was simple and straightforward. It would have ensured that American citizens and our allies would not be harmed by this administration's bad policy decisions, both today and for the years to come, by ensuring that any further reductions in our nuclear arsenal could not be done by the administration unilaterally. As background, here in the Senate, I have the honor of representing the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is the home of F.E. Warren Air Force Base and the 90th ICBM Missile Wing. Those who proudly serve there have an awesome responsibility and a history of doing excellent work. We've entrusted the most powerful of our weaponry to the best, to the most capable of managing these weapons in a thoroughly professional and reliable manner. Every day, the top-notch men and women who are stationed at F.E. Warren work together to maintain the world's most powerful military force, our ICBMs. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, they stand guard to ensure our safety and our freedom. They maintain a constant vigil from which they can never stand down because their mission is that critical. In a very real sense, that's why each one of us is able to sleep well at night. Moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas all across America know that when they tuck their kids in at night, someone is on duty and will continue to be, watching through the lonely hours of the night to make sure their little ones are safe and secure. Unfortunately, there are those in the administration who take the contributions of our military for granted. They don't have the sense of history that's needed to fully appreciate why these weapons were designed and put into operation in the first place. They don't see how much they're needed today and will still be needed tomorrow to ensure our future. They don't fully appreciate the key role they played in the past either. They seem to think that nuclear weapons are part of a bygone era, a relic of the past that hasn't been needed since the Cold War ended. The adoption of such a position is dangerous because it takes our position of strength for granted. What they fail to understand is the power of this deterrent and how it has kept us safe for decades. In the past, any nation that gave even a casual thought to threatening us or trying to do us harm had to quickly shelve those plans when the realization of what they would be up against was made clear. That is, after all, the point of having these weapons. That's one of the reasons why they're necessary. They have served us well ever since they were first deployed. The administration's views on our nuclear deterrent should not come as a surprise to any of us who have watched the development of these ideas when they were first offered for consideration. We've seen President Obama promise to do all that he can to reduce our nuclear arsenal, step by step. First, he rammed the New START treaty through the Senate by promising commitments that he ultimately did not keep. One of those was the promise to modernize our nuclear force, which we're still waiting on. I voted against ratification of the New START treaty because I believe maintaining a strong nuclear force is a critical part of protecting our country. It still is. The Obama administration has stated its intention to reduce the number of deployed nuclear warheads to as few as 1,000, which would be 550 less than is allowed under that New START treaty. What's more, in the fact sheet on Nuclear Posture Review Implementation Study, it states that the President could go outside the formal treaty-making process and reduce our nuclear arsenal unilaterally. That has bad idea written all over it. It means the administration can still make drastic nuclear reductions even if Russia will not agree to do the same. Does that make any sense? Should we just bargain with ourselves? That's something that should give us all pause and encourage us to go on record as to what needs to be done to keep our people safe. In case you think I'm overreacting, last year President Obama was caught on an open microphone promising former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev that he would have more flexibility to negotiate on nuclear defense issues after his election. Those comments are still before us, and they don't exactly instill trust and confidence that the President won't choose to bypass Congress and act unilaterally on nuclear reductions. All we have to do is look around the world to see why we should be concerned. Everywhere you look, nations are looking to increase, not decrease, their weaponry. In fact, as the President makes plans for reducing our own nuclear arsenal, it appears that Russia and China are looking for ways to modernize and update their own arsenals. These are dangerous weapons, and we need to be certain that we do everything we can to ensure that they continue to be fully monitored. They must never be used, but it seems to me that the best way to make certain they're never used is to be certain that no one would ever dare to think of using them against us or our allies. The concerns I have that some other country might use these weapons first are increased, not decreased, when I see the administration sending signals that they might not wait for everyone to disarm. They might do it on their own first. It would be like taking your own team off the field and allowing the other team to score at will. Relying on the goodwill of the opponent rarely works, and it's clearly not a good strategy. One final point. We aren't the only ones who are relying on our nuclear arsenal for our safety and security. There are other countries that rely on the United States for their national security. If we make it clear that we're dropping out of this vital source of our strength as a nation, this could encourage other countries to increase their own nuclear capability because they will suspect that they can no longer rely on us. Increasing the number of nations who have a nuclear capability is clearly something we dare not encourage. Simply put, this is exactly what my amendment was trying to stop. It would have ensured that any further reductions in our nuclear arsenal could not be done on a unilateral basis by the President alone. Instead, any changes would have to follow the application of the treaty system, which would give the Senate an opportunity to weigh in on this matter again, when a proposal in the form of a treaty is brought before us for our consideration. Just as ridiculous, the President threatened to veto if the amendment were in the bill. Now, unfortunately, due to the Majority Leader's actions, we aren't going to be able to debate this and other important issues, like I mentioned before, the privacy issue with the National Security Administration, the NSA, the listening in on telephone calls, the detention of U.S. citizens, addressing the sexual assault in the military, and a number of others. For all of these reasons, I cannot support moving forward on the defense bill. I hope our next defense bill authorization will all recognize the importance of being allowed to fully debate these issues. We won't wait until the end of the year when there's this looming deadline regarding bonuses so that our men and women in uniform can continue to fulfill their mission of keeping our nation safe, secure, and free and know what their future is. Something as important as the defense bill must not be drafted or taken up for a vote until it's made it through the whole legislative process. The legislative process was created for a reason, and we do ourselves and our constituents and those who serve in our armed forces a disservice when we fail to make full use of it. The bill hasn't made it through each step of the process. In my opinion, that's a fatal flaw. We can do better. We need to do better. We better do better in the future. Mr. President, I yield the floor. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.